that you can just do whatever and it will.
Okay, and then will you guys be able to give me a copy for that? Yes, I mean, that would be nice just to have it.
Of course.
Thank
it's
you.
recording. And let me just make sure the arrows now work because I did click on other things. Yeah, that's what I need. Oh, there we go. We're back.
Okay, thank you. Perfect. Thank you.
And I'm going to be watching from remotely from my desk.
Yeah, if there is something, yes, please. Okay, okay. In anything, I will call you from here. Hey.
Yeah, my name is Nikia.
Okay, Nikia.
So it should be fine.
Okay, thank you very much. It seems that now it's working.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if.
I'm gonna leave two right there for you, just in case. Okay.
Yeah, it looks like now it's working, but just in case.
Sure. Okay, I left two here in case.
What are you doing?
Okay. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Catalina, nice
Wendy,
to meet you.
very nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you.
I apologize, I'm going to have to leave a few minutes early to make another meeting.
It's okay, don't worry.
I just
hope.
wanted to let you know.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with you.
Okay, that is great.
As you probably know, this goes for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And they really stop sharply.
At 1 hour. And then questions at the end or during the talk? I'm fine.
Yeah, I think you should say, I'm going to introduce you. You should
Okay.
say whatever you wish about questions or
Okay.
questions of clarification, yes, but you don't want to get into debates until the
Okay.
end or whatever. It's mostly democracy sociology, so there's not much of an economist style of asking questions all the time.
Okay.
So you don't have to worry about that. But we will really wrap up everything, and that gets to 1 o'clock, and
Okay,
then
perfect.
people can stand around and talk.
Okay. Okay, yeah. I can prepare to 40, 45, and then
I
if
think
there are
that's
this
also good.
discussion or something,
Good
then,
target.
yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if there is something, then.
So let me introduce our speaker when we get to people in the second row file. You want to move up to
All these tall people sitting here.
I know. Good. any case, it's my pleasure to introduce to you today Catalina Herrera Almanza. Catalina did her undergraduate and master's work at the Universidad de los Andes in Bogota, Colombia, and then her PhD at Cornell, and was on the faculty at Northeastern University, and now is on the faculty at the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, I'm supposed to say, I think, to distinguish it from other branches of the University of Illinois. Her research interests are on economic development, economic demography, health, education, and gender. And an attractive part about her research approach or research portfolio, in my view, is that she integrates these interests, as you'll see somewhat in the paper she's going to present today. She has published a number of prominent journals, demographic research, World Bank Economic Review, Journal of Health Economics. So please join me in welcoming Catalina.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation. So I will be presenting today Bring a Friend, leveraging financial and peer support to improve women's reproductive agency in India. This is a joint work with Anukriti at the World Bank and Mahesh Kara at Boston University. Please interrupt me if you have questions or clarification questions. I plan to talk for about 45 minutes and we can have a larger discussion at the end of the talk. So let me start by motivating this paper. So women's empowerment is a global priority and a key sustainable development goal. And despite considerable social, political, and economic advances, women continue to have limited agency in many regions of the world. And this is important because it's about improving women's agency. Not only is valuable on its own right, but also offers instrumental returns for other dimensions of female empowerment and economic development. So this is why overall we are interested in these topics. In particularly in this paper, we are going to talk about women's agency in the domain of family planning and reproductive health, which is a fundamental dimension of the women's well-being. And why is that? Because empirical studies have shown that the lack of control over the number and timing of births can negatively affect women's health, education attainment, and labor market outcomes. So fertility decisions can also affect other women's economic decisions. Despite this importance, a large fraction of women globally lack reproductive agency. And it's estimated that around 270 million women have an unmet need for modern contraception. And what it means is that women would like to space or to prevent the first birth, but they don't have access to modern contraception. And I want to clarify this concept because we will work with it through the paper, but reproductive agency in this paper is about having the power to decide and control contraceptive use, pregnancy, and childbearing. Now, which is our context, and I think probably I'm going to go on this side. So our study is situated in rural India, specifically in India's most populous state, Uttar Pradesh. And in this context, women have extremely low levels of reproductive agency, which is measured in direct and indirect indicators. For example, 44% of the sample women at baseline had no say in decisions about their own healthcare. 40% are allowed to go alone to the health facility, so they have mobility restrictions. And 50% did not want another child, but only 80% were using modern contraception, which is an indirect measure of unmet need. In fact, 65% have never visited a clinic for family planning and reproductive health services. And something that we have documented in previous work is that these women are isolated. 36% of them had not engaged with anyone besides their husbands and mothers-in-law on family planning and related issues. So they don't have any other peers to talk about these issues. So in addition of these low levels of reproductive agency, women have also low levels of autonomy in general in our context. For example, only 80% of women are allowed to go alone to the market, and 40% of them have worked in the last 7 days. So this is just a context where there are like a strict restrictive social norms. Now, like many high-stake choices, married women often make contraceptive decisions jointly with their husbands. And in patriarchal societies where women move to their husband's village, other household members, such as the mother-in-law, we are going to call mother-in-law through the slides, play a key role in women's decision-making. And in our study, what it's key is this conflict or this misalignment in fertility preferences among the husband, the mother-in-law, and the daughter-in-law. So this graph comes from another of our papers. And what you can see here is that there is a striking differences in the ideal number of children that the mother-in-law wants and the daughter-in-law wants. And this number, the difference between the green and the purple bar, is even more drastic or larger when talking about the ideal number of sons. So remember that these are co-residents, mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law. So in addition, these daughters-in-law depend on their husbands and the mothers-in-law to visit the family planning clinic. So for the 35% that are going to the family planning clinics, they go accompanied either by the husbands or the mothers-in-law. So we have documented at the baseline that the mother-in-law can strategically constrain the daughters-in-law access to social networks, as these networks can be modifying probably just the fertility preferences or the access to go into another clinic. So this is the context where we are. Now, conceptually, what we are thinking is that women may have a weak outside option and low intra-household bargaining power, because as you can tell in this context, they might not have equal control over the resources. So these women don't work. Most of them, they don't have any other financial means. And in addition, there are social norms that can prevent them to access to go to the family planning clinic. So for example, at baseline, only 6% of women go by themselves to the family planning clinic. So in this context, women's preferences are receiving less weight in this household decision-making over contraceptive access and use. So as a household, probably a woman does not have much say in their preferences, and a woman may therefore be unable to visit the providers either by themselves or the peers that they want to choose. And then this is why most likely there is an unmet need for family planning. That is that they want a space, as the 50% they want to use family planning access, but they don't have access. So these outcomes may significantly differ from the woman's private optum, despite of being efficient for the house. And with this conceptual framework in mind, what we are going to do is to investigate two interventions to improve women's reproductive agency by offering women subsidized family planning services, vouchers, and enabling to seek family planning services with female peers. So how we are going to do that? We are going to conduct a randomized controlled trial in Jaipur, Uttar Pradesh, India. And we are going to have three groups. The first one is, or three treatment arms. The first one is going to be the own group, that is, that as a randomized woman is going to receive a voucher for subsidized family planning services at a local family clinic only for herself, so the standard voucher. In the second, we are going to call this Bring a Friend, and is the fact where a woman receives the same voucher as the own group, but also for any peers who accompany her to the family planning clinic. So think about intuitively as a Groupon, right? When it says invite your friend, it's actually we thought about this as the basic of our idea. And then there is the control group. So we are going to measure the impact of the interventions on a woman's family planning clinic visits as a measure of access, modern contraceptive use, and social networks. So before, I hope just to give you what are the main messages that we are going to unpack during the talk. So both vouchers empower women to invite female peers to accompany them to the clinic, increase clinic visits and modern contraceptive use. And the Bring a Friend voucher, the fact that we are encouraging women to invite another women, was more effective than the OWN voucher for women who face greater intra-household allocation. And we are going to measure this intra-household allocation by the mother-in-law opposition to family planning at baseline. So also this, and the fact that we are enabling women to offer vouchers to other women also expanded their social connections. And remember that these women are socially isolated, enhance peer engagement, and lower the fear of stigma related to the family planning use. Yes, Lana.
The background that you presented about the role of the mother-in-law and the husband. So how well accepted is this if the woman says, I'm not going with my mother-in-law, but I'll bring a friend to the wedding? So is this, or instead of the husband, I'll go with a friend?
So this is a good question. So let me answer in different parts. So in this context, as you saw the graph, there are more divergence in preferences between the mothers-in-law and the daughters-in-law than the husbands. The husbands sometimes are absent because of migration. This is a context where they are migration. So basically, women have more kind of bargaining power with the mother-in-law. So husbands are kind of out, quote unquote, of the picture. However, what we find, we were worried about backlash effects because we said, okay, probably if these women are in power and they start going with other people, but we don't find any backlash effects. And in fact, we have another small paper where we document that the vouchers can empower women to start discussions with the mother-in-law. So in terms of initiating discussions of, why I'm not, we measure this as discussions over the family planning and fertility preferences. So although we haven't, we don't have more defined outcomes in terms of bargaining, we don't think that there is a backlash effect. So women are.
They receive money for the vouchers. They bring a friend. They get the voucher. And
so they get the voucher about themselves in the Bring a Friend group. And for the week, so they did receive their own voucher in this Bring a Friend group, and I will have more details in the intervention. But basically, are the vouchers for their friends. So I received my own voucher, but if I was randomly allocated in this Bring a Friend group, I can invite my friends basically, and they will be subsidized. Yes.
Is cost a barrier to going to these centers? Like, will the voucher just allow for a lower cost and that
yes,
is a barrier to entry there, or is it more just like a promotional tool to like information? Here you go, and here you have this.
So I will talk about that but just to answer shortly, we are partnering with a private clinic, okay. So you need the subsidy to access this clinic because in this landscape there is public provision as well of these services. I think that there was another question. Yes.
Yeah, is the contraceptive or family planning services concealable?
So some of them are, you will see that it's open choice, so some of them are concealable. And in fact, we have one of the results related to concealability of the methods. Because of course, you would like to, it's not the method that most of our women use, but you will have the hypothesis that if there is some sort of conflict, you would like to have something that is hidden from the other household members. But this is not the case in our data, but we test for that. And I will show you some related results later. Should I continue? Yes. Okay. So just very briefly, so we see that our work contributes to the literature that has documented that individuals derive many benefits from their social connections and most likely social networks. And in particularly, people in this room have documented that the lack of social engagement around typically gender subjects such as family planning can limit women's access to information and sustain fear of stigma. So that was kind of the basics that we were looking at our work. And recent studies have shown that female peers can empower women. So, however, little is not about what type of interventions can help women leverage their peers to increase their agency. And this is why we see that this Bring a Friend intervention is trying to test whether this social engagement of relatively isolated women can be enhanced by enabling them to build new connections and by offering women financial incentives in the context of family planning and reproductive health. We also contribute to the intra-household literature of intra-household bargaining and interactions between culture and family. Previous research has based these collective household models when husbands and wives bargain over fertility and contraception use. But in our work, we are trying to include the role of the mother-in-law. And we have seen that a growing body of work, particularly in economics, but also in other social science, has emphasized the importance of other household members in decision-making. And it's not only in a negative influence. For example, there are a couple of studies in India as well that show that the presence of the mother-in-law can allow daughters-in-law to work. So it's an empirical question in that regard. So our study is unique in showing that vouchers and peer connections can leverage to improve this women's reproductive agency, as I defined it before, by overcoming the constraints imposed by the mother-in-law in patrilocal societies. So let me tell you more about the experimental design and data, and probably I can address more of your questions. So we are here in 28 villages in Jampur district of Uttar Pradesh, that is shown in the map. So Uttar Pradesh is more or less as large as Brazil, and is India's most populous state and will be world's fifth most populous country by itself. So, and unmet need for family planning is 18%, and the share of demand satisfied by modern methods is 50%. So it's relevant for our question. We partner with a local private clinic. We are going to call this clinic ADC, Family Planning Clinic. And ADC was chosen on its proximity to our sample women, reliable supply of one range of family planning methods, and relatively short waiting time. So I think that you were asking about what is the landscape of family planning. So there are other centers. So we did kind of a census of what type of health facilities are in our 28 villages, but ADC is kind of the best provider that you can have in this area. But it's a private clinic, so you will need to be subsidizing these services. So the sample criteria are 18 to 30 years old women. They are married, they live in Jampur. They are not currently pregnant, nor within 6 months of postpartum, have at least one child and live within 10 kilometers of the ADC. So one of the issues will be that why we didn't include women who don't have children, but in this context, married couples, they need to prove their fertility, so our window of intervention will be very short. So this is why we are focusing more on spacing. And the sample size then is 671 eligible women that we recruited from a listing of 2,781 households across these 28 villages. And we chose the youngest woman to participate if many were eligible in the household. So this is kind of the area where we are. You can see kind of the distribution of the control women, Bring a Friend women, and own women. And this point here is the ADC clinic. So this is just to have an idea of geographically the dispersion. So let me tell you about the study timeline. We have the baseline survey collected during June to August 2018. We randomized our sample into these 3 groups, own voucher, Bring a Friend voucher, and control group, and we stratified the randomization using key covariates that modify the outcomes, such as years of schooling, current family planning use, number of peers. And all groups received a baseline survey and an information brochure on modern methods and the benefits of healthy timing and spacing of births. And we did that because we wanted to address any gap of information before the intervention itself. Then we did a 10-month intervention between September 18 and June 9, 2010, and we did the follow-up survey between July and October 2010. Yes, Millie.
So you're targeting married women that already had a child.
Yes.
So this is really access to contraception after childbearing.
Yes, after the first birth.
Do you have a sense about how much is the unsatisfied demand for contraception in that group of women who have children? You know, can you get, because you have the overall 18%, I'm wondering how much is for just, women with one child. You might be able to calculate that.
Yes, so we have, among our women, it's a rough measure of unmet need for family planning because you need to have but it's 50% that they would like to space and around 18%, exactly, 18%, around 80% they use modern contraception. So I will show the statistics that even the contraception that includes traditional methods is a little bit larger than that. But for modern contraception in this, and we did some calculations that I don't have here with the following the unmet need for family planning, and it makes sense for this group. We're around 18, a little bit higher, 20% or something like that.
There's a large unsatisfied demand
for this group. Yes, yeah, that is correct. So let me tell you more a little bit of the intervention. So this is the own group. These are the vouchers that you see there. So the voucher was around $28, 2,000 rupees, and coverage for any family planning services at the ATC. So somebody in the back was asking if they include concealable. It was everything that they can get in this clinic. And we also include one free family planning consultation at this clinic because women needed to be screened if they can access family planning or not. They don't know sometimes if they are pregnant or not. So we also have a transport reimbursement for 3 visits to the ADC clinic during the period of intervention, and the voucher translated into different proportional discounts. So these 28 RIPs will be $28 or 2,000 rupees will be around 60 to 100% for pills and condoms, but injectables might be covering around the 60% for the 10-month period. But what we wanted is that women basically take whatever they want, and the choice set was not restrictive. And the idea here is that we want to overcome these financial barriers, right? And in our conceptual model, what we are thinking is that if we give a voucher to these women, then they will have probably a higher say of what they want, and then they will be encouraged. However, given the context that I described at the initial of the talk, the Bring a Friend might be kind of in addition of these financial constraints, overcoming other mobility and stigma concerns. So once again, the women in this group, they receive the 2,000 voucher, the transportation and the free first consultation as their own work, just for them. But if a woman was accompanied by peers to the ADC clinic, these peers, during their first joint visit with them, will also be provided by the same voucher. So that is kind of the major difference with the own voucher. So if I bring my friend and this person is suitable for family planning, she will have the same package.
So there could be as many peers as a woman wants?
So we allow them to bring anyone with them, and then we cap at three different peers for any visit. But given that these women are isolated, we didn't have more than 1 or 2. So, but we open up to 3.
In principle, I could say to every woman in the village.
no, we cap in the terms of reference of the voucher, we cap it at 3. A 3 per visit. So if I went 3 times, we were thinking, okay, I will be incentivized to bring every different time, different set of women. So this is what I was going to say, 2 to 3 were allowed to bring maximum 2 peers at any given visit and bring different peers or the same peers in subsequent visits. It was 2 to 3 peers. But notice that we didn't restrict them. We didn't say, if you come with your husband and your mother-in-law, you are not going to have the services. They could bring anybody that they wanted. But the idea of the experiment precisely was to see if this will empower them to bring somebody else. And once again, we try to overcome multiple barriers here, financial mobility and stigma. So just to a recapitulation is we have our baseline sample, 671. We're randomizing these 3 groups, control, own, and bring a friend woman. And then we approach in follow-up around 625 women. We lost 46 just by migration. We couldn't recontact them. So our attrition rate was around 6.9%, which is quite good. And then there is balance between attritors and not attritors, so there is no concerns there. So let me tell you a little bit about the data that we have. So the baseline and the follow-up survey is structural models based on demographic health surveys. These are probably everybody in this room knows about them. So we have birth history, contraception, fertility, and particularly we collected data on social networks. So the way that we did it is that we asked each woman to name up to 5 individuals in Jampur besides her husband and the mother-in-law with whom she discusses general affairs, so personal affairs to issues such as children illness, schooling, health, work, and financial support. We are gonna call these the general peers, and issues around family planning, fertility, and reproductive health, close peers. So we try to map the 2 types of social connections. As I mentioned before, this balance across treatment, and we also have 18% of the surveys were done by phone, just because we couldn't reach in person these people, but the balance between phone and in-person respondents is the same. So just these are the balance table across treatment. So a couple of things to see in this table is that on average, our women are 25 years old. They have 9 years of education. And we see some statistically significant differences, for example, in other backward class. And this is why we are gonna condition our models by these covariates. And also in work last year, and as well in mobility score. So we constructed a composite score as the number of places that these women are restricted to go, just to have an idea of mobility. And also I wanted to note that around 65% on average, they are co-residents with the mothers-in-law. So also we have,
Could
yes.
you describe the mobility score?
Yes, the mobility score is just an addition of 6. So we asked women if they were allowed to go to the health facility, the market, the temple, and then we add if they were allowed to go by themselves or with other people. So it's just as a way to restrict. So this goes from 1 to 6. So the mobility is pretty low. So we also, I just wanted also to note that these women are very, they have number of general peers like on average 1.6, but if you notice the number of close peers is 0.5. I mean, the median is around 1. So basically they don't have people with whom to talk. Yes? Mm-hmm. I think if I recall well, it's 30% who have already a son, but this is an interesting point because one of the heterogeneous effects of access to visits of clinic is larger for those who have already a son, which makes sense with the son preference of women in the sample. So we also asked before I go to the results, we asked women if they understood the vouchers. We were concerned if they really were understanding what was about. So the majority of treated women understood how the vouchers work. So at NLAN, 80% knew about the transportation reimbursement, 67% knew about the free consultation, 76% knew about the family planning service at ADC, and only 4% thought that it was about child services. So they were getting the differences between own voucher and bring a friend voucher. In particularly, we asked them, did the program enable you to offer your friends a voucher if they visited the ADC with you? And 74% of the bring a friend voucher women responded yes. So because we were concerned if they were understanding what was this about it. So in our empirical strategy, we are going to leverage this randomized control design And what we are going to estimate is an outcome for a woman I in treatment T living in village B at follow-up. Our coefficients of interest is beta, that goes with own, that is going to be the average treatment effect of the own voucher versus the comparison, the control group, and theta, that is going to be the effect of the bring a friend voucher with respect to the comparison group. And we are interested in the difference between these two, theta and beta, because it's going to be the added value of this bring a friend component over the financial empowerment. We are going to control by woman levels control. So we use years of schooling, current family planning, use desire for another child and number of general peers as stratification variables. And we also control by other baseline covariates that, as I mentioned before, they were unbalanced, or they are also important for the reproductive behavior. We have village fixed effects, robust standard errors, and we are going to show intent to treat estimates because there were around 10 women that we allocate the vouchers, but they were not unable to take TAP. One will be concerned about these spillovers to the control group, but this is an unlikely concern given our context that women are isolated. Only 4 of them reported in the control group that they had received a voucher. So we will not be concerned about that. So let me start with the results. So I'm going to start with the effects on asking peers for company to visit ADC. So in the first, and this is the main specification. So in the main column, we see that own voucher and bring a friend voucher increases the probability of asking someone to come to them with to the clinic. And then we also are not surprised that they ask also husbands or mothers-in-law. But most importantly, we see that own voucher and bring a friend voucher increase the probability of asking non-husbands and mothers-in-law. And if you see the effect of the bring a friend voucher is almost 3 times, I will say a little bit less than 3 times that the own voucher. This is a statistically significant difference between the own voucher and the bring a friend voucher. So who are these people? Most likely are sisters-in-law and female non-relatives. So the bottom line here is that the bring a friend has a differential effect over own voucher on women's likelihood of asking other female peers to accompany them to the clinic. And this is, in this context, is just some sort of signs of agency. Then we say, well, is this being reflected in going to the clinic? So in the first column, we see the effects of own voucher and bring a friend voucher on visited ADC. And we see that it increases the probability by 19 percentage points if there is no difference on average. And we also tested if they are visiting any clinic. And why we do so? Because we wanted to know what type of users are coming. So the fact that we see that there is a positive and statistically significant effect of both vouchers and visit any clinic means that there are not only existing users switching to ADC, but also new users. And these are good news because probably we are reaching people who didn't have any service before. And then we ask, well, what are the effects of visiting ADC with other people? So in the in the third column, we see that own and bring a friend voucher increases the probability of going by themselves. This point estimate is large with respect to the control mean. And also, if you remember, only 6% of the people go by themselves to the clinic. So this is kind of a change in norms, right? That they are more encouraged to go by themselves. And in column 4 and 5, we see that the vouchers, both vouchers increase the probability with going with not husbands and mothers-in-law. So it's consistent that they are asking other people different from husbands and mothers-in-law and they are visited. No difference between bring a friend and own vouchers. So the bottom line here is that on average, both vouchers increase visits to the ADC and to any family planning clinic, visits alone and visits with peers different from the husbands and the mothers-in-law. Then what we said, okay, is there any differences? We find that there is the same effect, average effect, but it might be that there are differential effects for those who have more constraints. And what I'm going to show you here are heterogeneous effects by mother-in-law opposed to family planning at baseline. And we are going to fully interact the models that we have with mother-in-law positions. So I apologize, this table is pretty massive. I'm gonna try to do my best of explaining and don't lose you. But so the idea here is to look at these coefficients. So first of all, we are interested in the effect of own voucher and bring-a-friend voucher for those women whose mother-in-law is opposed to family planning. And what we see is that the bring-a-friend voucher has a differential effect for those women who have more social restrictions in inviting someone to the clinic. How we know that? Because there is this difference between these two coefficients, but also if you see the total effect of the own voucher is null, while this is statistically positive. And which is even more interesting is that for those women whose mother-in-law is opposed at baseline, the effect of the bring-a-friend has a differential effect of their own when they are invited non-husbands and mothers-in-law. And this is given by this p-value difference between the own and the bring-a-friend voucher. And also when you see the effects, there is no effect of the own voucher and the bring-a-friend voucher. So we were very encouraged about, the effect that this leveraging these peers is more effective for women who have more social constraints. And then we have similar effects in terms of going to the visit ADC, and this is the case when visited with not husbands and mothers-in-law. So it seems that this bring-a-friend voucher is enabling women to kind of overcome this mother-in-law opposition and be more likely to visit the ADC and to visit with not husbands and mothers-in-law. And we have a similar story for visited any clinic. So then we say, well, now we know that it's working more for these women who have a mother-in-law opposition. Now what happened with mother contraceptive use? Because as you can tell, you can arrive to the clinic and probably some things can happen there once for the uptake. So in the first column, we are estimating the models for all women. And what we see is that the bring-a-friend voucher increases the probability of uptake of modern contraception. And this is around like a 49%, 55%, 50%, sorry, of the control mean. And the own voucher has kind of similar effect, but it's not detectable for conventional levels. And then in column 2 and 3, we were interested in similar question. For whom will be more effective this type of vouchers? And we see in column 2 that the bring-a-friend voucher is more effective for uptaking contraception for those whose mother-in-law is opposed at baseline. However, notice that here we don't have, this is positive, statistically significant, but we don't have, we are not able to detect the differences between the bring-a-friend and BIF because probably we are power constrained. However, it's in the same kind of line, or is aligned with the results in number 3, that we found the bring-a-friend voucher increases modern contraception for those women who were thinking that family planning was embarrassing to use at baseline. So it's kind of, this bring-a-friend is also overcoming some sort of social constraints around family planning. So women switch from traditional to modern contraception methods. We know that because there was no statistically significant effects of the vouchers on use of any contraceptive method. The results are driven by short-term contraceptive methods. So somebody was asking in the back about injectables. So most of our women uptake pills and condoms, despite the fact that injectables were, available. And the findings are consistent with the more the family planning and reproductive health literature that has tried to analyze the causal impact of these vouchers. So vouchers is a tool that has been used, tested to increase modern contraception. But I think that what we are adding to this causal evidence is, look, if there are more mobilities, more constraints, than the financial constraints, then a voucher like this one, like the bring-a-friend, can overcome these additional barriers. And also we find that the bring-a-friend and not the own voucher has a differential effect on modern contraception for whom concealability is important. So kind of making the story is not only about or it can be related of the mother-in-law position, but for these women who have more social barriers, they think that concealable is important, they found embarrassing family planning at baseline. And also we exclude in these estimates that I presented some women that arrived to the clinic and they found out that they are pregnant or they couldn't uptake family planning for other reasons, medical reasons, but our results are even robust, including all the women in the estimation sample. So finally, what I'm going to show is the effects on women's social connections. And I think that this is an interesting part. So as an outcome, we are going to start by the number of close peers outside the household in village and online. And what we see is that the own voucher and the bring a friend voucher has a positive effect. It's not statistically significant at conventional levels. This p-value is around 0.11. But the own voucher doesn't have any effect at all. And if you see, it's even negative. So the difference between own voucher and bring a friend voucher is positive and statistically significant. The other important issue is the size. So the bring a friend voucher increases this number of close peers by about 27%, so it's sizable. Now we also see that the bring a friend voucher increase the peer engagement related to family planning. So BIF women are more likely to have close peers who accompany them to the clinic. And also, they are more likely to have close peers that advise them to use family planning. And these social connections and peer engagement finally decreases among the bring a friend women, decreases the stigma of going to the family planning clinic or the being seen. We measure the fear of a stigma as being, afraid of being seen at the clinic. So this is an important result because what we are finding is that just the fact of bringing somebody with you can also decrease this stigma on modern contraceptive use. And this is consistent with other literature that has shown that peer support can play a key role in decreasing the fear of stigma around health issues. So we also try to do some heterogeneous effects for whom these connections matter the most or where the effects were larger. And what we find is these are fully interacted models. And what we find is that the bring a friend women increase the number of peers for those who didn't have peers that use family planning. So basically, they were increasing the number of connections, thinking that nobody at baseline was using family planning. So basically, they didn't need family planning at baseline. And consistently, we see that the bring a friend voucher increase the number of peers that accompany these women to the health facility, mostly for these women that lack of peers in village that use family planning. Basically, if at baseline the woman, didn't have, peers that support her, then this program helped her. And I think that this is the key message here, that bring a friend voucher enable women to seek out peer support both by increasing the number of family plans and then this engagement. But it was most important for women without family planning peers at baseline or that use family planning at baseline. Any questions? So these are important results because what I have mentioned in terms of the social isolation, and because this is, and also because of the benefits that these women can have in terms of these social networks, to access these social networks. And as I mentioned, this magnitude of 26% increase in the social connections is comparable to that of what other interventions have looked at the effect of self-groups in terms of the number of friends in Madhya Pradesh. So we wanted to benchmark, okay, we are finding this 27%, how big it is. And is around what they find in increasing of number connections using self-help groups. So a couple of other results that I just want to mention, and I'm not going to go in detail because of the time, but basically we don't find any unintended backlash effects. We were concerned about that because there are some studies in Zambia that have shown that there can be some backlash effect in women's health or women's domestic violence. We don't have domestic violence, but at least we ask negative experiences with family planning, satisfaction with sex life, and marital satisfaction overall. And we don't find any effects of the vouchers there that are detrimental for women. And also we have, because we are overcoming these financial constraints, we also calculated the heterogeneous treatment effects over voucher received by baseline financial constraints, and we find that these vouchers, these heterogeneous effects help poor women to increase their visits to ADC, to any clinic, and as well to using modern methods. Finally, I'm not going to go in detail over the robustness checks, but it's just to let you know that our results are robust to clustering the standard errors by village, implemented well-clustered bootstrap errors at the village level, multiple hypothesis testing, and we also, because we presented the ITT results, our estimates are also consistent with the treatment on the treated effects. And as I mentioned before, only few women were randomly assigned to the treatment. They didn't receive these vouchers. And although we don't have any concerns between compliers and not compliers, we use an IV approach to estimate this treatment on the treatment to mitigate any selection concerns. So in other words, we are more or less, sure that these results kind of pass all of these robustness checks. So to summarize, both vouchers empower women to invite female peers to accompany them to the clinic, to increase clinic visits alone without husbands and mothers-in-law, and to increase modern contraceptive use. So the Bring a Friend voucher was more effective than the OWN voucher for women who face stronger intra-household constraints to family planning, measured in our case by the opposition of the mother-in-law to contraception at baseline. And once again, enabling women to offer vouchers to others also expanded the social networks, enhance their peer engagement, and decrease the fear of a stigma of going related to family planning use. So these results suggest in our context that we can reduce the socioeconomic dependence on husbands and mother-in-law by giving this access to vouchers and also enabling women to more effectively leverage and expand their social networks. And some conclusions remark is that restrictive, and this is more general, restrictive social norms, resource constraints, and social isolation can limit women access to and utilization of various public services. And this is particularly relevant in developing countries. And even more, these constraints are more pronounced in contexts like rural India, where women lack freedom of movement, are more socioeconomically dependent on other family members, and is even critically in these gender and sensitive domains such as fertility and family planning. So we evaluate an innovative approach to improve married women's access to family planning that not only overcomes these financial barriers, but also these social barriers to family planning use. And we also think that to fully understand these intra-household interactions, we need to examine the influence of other members different from the husbands, and that usually we try to, to model wives and husbands over the decision of fertility and family planning. And future interventions that aim to improve women's outcome could benefit from engaging the mother-in-law. And this is what we are doing now in our second phase of the study. We are going to interview as well the mother-in-law, so the pairs of daughters and mothers-in-law, and then we are going to get at the bottom of where this opposition is coming from. It can be only misperceptions, for example. So this is one of the things that we want to get from this data, from mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law, and try to map what type of interventions we can do to involve her and probably reduce some of these opposition and social constraints. And then, moreover, social networks influence individuals in different ways. This is important in developing countries when there is lack of credit, information sources, public provisions, and so on. So, although interventions such as help microfinance groups that I mentioned before can increase networks, only 20% of women belong to these collectives in India. So this is a call to search for alternative and innovative ways to leverage female friends, peers, to improve women's agency overall. And I think that I have. Thank you. Yes.
Do you know anything about, the marriage context here, and are dowries paid, are there arranged marriages, things like that that might influence the woman's ability to bargain in these types of fertility situations to begin with?
Yeah, so basically, it's, as you described, there is arranged marriages. Most of these are arranged marriages, and they have paid dowry. So we don't have information in the size of the dowry. We tried to collect it, but it was very noisy. But it's a context where women are mostly in arranged marriages.
And are they? Do you have any information on their own relationship with their own mother? So whether there's any of things with their own mother?
No, this is an interesting thing. Actually, this is a good idea for the next follow-up. So something that we are interested now is to ask the mother-in-law what was her relationship with her own mother-in-law, right? So it's kind of this intergenerational, because these women will be a mother-in-law next, right? So I think that here is more than the mother, the role of the mother is more the role of the mother-in-law. Yes.
So, question. So presumably there's a range of interventions to increase family planning. Would this be cost effective compared to other ways of getting the same effects?
You are right, there are more, but we haven't done a cost-benefit analysis. I think that I don't have an answer for that. Something that we were interested in, that it came very recently, is that the government has now a program that they try to involve the mother-in-law. And the way that they have been trying to do is called like a SAS bow or something like that, is through the ASHA workers, basically. Now, I don't know, we will need to compare, right? Once this is completely deployed, what is more cost effective if the goal is to increase. But yeah, we would like to probably to test in a larger scale to see if it is cost effective.
Way back when we did this, we estimated like direct effects and social multiplier effects at
Yeah.
this time of distribution. So anyway, I think it's
no, but it's a very yeah.
way to increase it, or whether one should just put more money in it, or whatever.
No, it's a very good question, right? Because and to be honest, when we started working, we thought that the networks were not going to be that tight. So we were thinking, okay, it's going to be more cost effective. There are going to be multiplier effects, dissemination of information. But it turns out that these women are pretty isolated. So we are talking at the margin, basically, 1 friend, 2 friends. But even if this is the scale, we will need to do a serious cost-benefit analysis to answer the question. Yes.
It's very linked to HD's question in the sense that what is the penetration of ASHAs and ANMs in this network? Because by theory, you should get free condoms for an ASHA. So it could just be possible to get information they go to an ASHA and ANM and get condoms. I'm not sure what concept it was, but I'm pretty sure an ASHA or ANM should give you access to free condoms. My second, so I was just wondering how that works. My second question is the take-up of objective was just a cost factor. So even providing 60% of the cost still makes them have to be 800 rupees, which is 2 hours. And you meet Narega wages for 200 rupees, so that's like almost 5 days of work. So 4 days of work, you pay for it and 1 day to go. So it would just be a cost thing that they're not taking up objective. 5 days of work. And my last question is, are there any effects for peers? Like if they bring someone else, does it change family planning behavior
For
of
the
the
peers.
friend also? Like if you're bringing a friend who didn't have access, is it possible that you're seeing effects?
So let me start by the last question and go back. So we haven't analyzed the effects of the peers itself. So we would like to do to do so in a second phase. So for now, we were just kind of saying the ego part, not the effects. But this will be an interesting part. It will be difficult to identify in the panel if it is the same peer, but we are going to give it a try in future work. The second question is related to injectables. So we do have some sort of questions related to the preferences, and it seems that injectables are not the preferred method. So controlling by that aspect, we are in this context, we are not sure that injectables, because we were expecting something given the concealability part, but in this context, it's not something that they will do it. And of course, ASHA workers and we have public health facilities in our area, right? So it's not that we are shutting down that. What happened is that for what we gathered in the baseline survey is that this public provision is not regular, sometimes there are stockouts, and this will apply to the ASHA workers. So what we were interested is to see, I mean, we control, for example, if ASHA workers were, providing, or we asked if one of these friends was an ASHA worker. We didn't find any of these evidence of the ASHA workers probably mitigating the effects. But I think that my general sense of that is that the private service is much more regular than the public service. Yes, Amir.
No, I'm going to expand.
Okay.
Bring in sociology here.
Yes, of course.
I mean, you have all the villages, there were different villages. And
yes.
Have you investigated the variation by village to see if there's something about the clinics, the family planning, to see there's something about the context in which women that could affect that? Not just you treat them as fixed effects, but is there something about you? Can you incorporate contextual factors and see how?
If this, so we have in this, I'm gonna pull the map of the 28 villages, or not the 28 villages, but the one that is, so we have 10 facilities in the whole for the 28 villages. So it's not that there is one facility per village, right?
But then you can have distance.
Yes, so we did, and then this is what I was going, that's what I was going. We did effects by distance. We work a lot with the distance, and we didn't find any, no. Because on average, our women live, I'm trying to look for one day we will arrive to the map here, but on average, our women live 2.5 from the ADC. And then we did, for example, we controlling our models by the distance, to the closest health clinic, not this ADC, but then we didn't find any different effects.
You can read that, on the one hand, it's good news. So they are providing services. So it's not, you don't have, you don't have to find a negative effect. I mean, it's actually the clinics are working because, overall, I'm trying to put this in context. Even with all these pressures on women and things like that, fertility in India, I was just looking at the TFR, it's already below replacement. So, it's like this is still a context where fertility has declined very rapidly. And so, what has moved that? What has produced? So this is you're looking at like a group of women that still cannot satisfy their, but still is a context of very rapid fertility.
That is true. That, I mean, and I think that I have a table where I show like what is the external validity of this, right? Because this is similar to rural India, but for the whole country, India has a lower fertility rate, right? So, but I think that's something just to clarify, probably I was not very exact on this, is that we are not modifying the supply side of the story, right? So we are just, okay, these are the clinics, this is the public provision, and then we fix with ADC. Our idea was, okay, we are gonna fix that this is a good clinic, that they are not gonna run out of pills or things, as much as one can do, but then we were studying is just the barriers on the other side of the story, right, on the demand. So answering your question, yeah, no matter what, India has a tradition of, family planning programs, but here the question is more on the side of the demand. Yes, please.
Last question.
Well,
yes.
So about fertility and things like that, during translation into like what this this meant in terms of TFR or births or?
No, we haven't done that, and the reason is that we were not powered. I mean, we are powered barely to measure pregnancy. So we know that there is a decrease in pregnancy, but we have not done any like a back in the envelope calculation on that.
Very good, so thank you very much.
No, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so now I don't know how I can. Gracias, Emil. Okay.
No, muy interesante.
Okay.
Este es a mí me parece, es un comentario en general a lo que está pasando en demografía, que